Welcome, Arnold. Gerald Clark on February 6, 2019. Got Jesus Valencia with me today. We're taking a look at him before we get started, trying to get the feet aligned correctly for client view. As you can see on the chart in the back, it shows the front, left, back, and right from the top to bottom on the skeletal views. And the reason it does that in that sequence is that's what client view uses to read the files. So we're going to get started on him here. It's second hour session, so we're going to be working from the foot all the way up to the knee and probably a little higher up into the quad if he can find a horizontal hinge in his ankle. So I start explaining to him what we're trying to get and how we're going to start. So I decided to use a little oil with him today. I don't normally do that with a second session, but because of the the state of the skin, or all the factors involved, I decided to use a little lubrication. And I'm really working on the surface today, so really kind of assessing things right here. I moved him so I could get his ankle so it would elevate directly up off the edge of the table. That's a good way to start. Looking at the plantar fascia, the fibularis longus, lots of issues going on. This foot was really an issue because he said he broke this leg when he was no, not this leg, the other leg. He broke his left leg when he was 6. So that gives you a lot of time. He's 19 now, so that gives a lot of time for that effect to establish a pattern in the leg. I'm staying very much on the surface, working on the superficial fascia. A lot of times I'll put my hand underneath so I can feel the pressure and what's happening from front to back. And I switched to the other camera here so you can get another view of what we were doing. This is the first time he's ever had his superficial fascia changed, and so we're clearly looking for threshold levels that are not in pain. So here on his feet, I ended up doing a lot of holding and having him move, articulate his ankle, move the toes, and things like that, because it was really tender. And I remember it was for me the first time to do any kind of work on the lower leg was just insane. So a lot of superficial fascia across this bone along the tibia, which I'm working there right now. The tibialis anterior ligament all the way up near the knee gets really deviated. The fibularis muscles that run along the fibula are oftentimes just rock hard and very fused to the leg. This I switched over to the new client view webcam that we installed. It's a little bit clearer than that last one. That last one was really tough. So here I'm doing some rotation work, holding the fascia on the edge of his tibia and having him rotate his leg toward me while I kind of get some separation there. Everywhere where the fascia crosses the bone in the very early sessions, you're looking at that to essentially get some freedom of that superficial fascia, the exterior wetsuit all over the body. So that's exactly what we're doing. I found the head of the fibula was really an issue up in the popliteal space while he was moving, and I wanted to hold that while he did some motions with his ankle to try to get a little bit of freedom there, and those attachments, especially the head of the fibula, because I could tell that there was some stuff going on in the ankle. Normally what happens is the fibula drops down at the lateral malleoli, which is showing there on the ankle right now, and gets really thick around the ankle there. And then up at the head of the fibula, you got all kinds of deviations for that. This is a good technique to work that fibularis longus that runs along the fibula. Turn the leg slightly sideways, use the weight of the leg, and then pull along the fibularis, just letting the pressure of his leg do it. Here I ended up using both hands up near the attachments to kind of facilitate that. I noticed there was a lot of issues going on with the extensor ligaments on the tops of the toes, and you could see that in that close-up shot there. So I had to be real careful with working the top of the foot. I had to come up with some strategy. I flipped him over to work on the calcaneal ligament there, and then to work some of the plantar fascia, kind of like what I call unshoeing the horse. So right now I'm working on the calcaneal ligament, which is composed of the soleus, the plantaris, and the gastrocs. And speaking of the gastrocs, I ended up working up there a little ways because there was so much stuff going on there. So I'm looking at the horizontality of the hinge of his ankle from this side while he's on his stomach versus the other way. I used quite a bit of a rotation technique, holding the fascia and let him move against me on the lower leg. It's a really great technique. We used to do this to each other when we were kids. We call it Indian burns on the arm, but if you hold it and let them do a little bit of the moving, they can control that. And it's a great way to loosen that fascia on the lower leg, which very much controls the shape and state of the foot. So you can see I'm working out there. Now we're going to unshoe the horse. Using my elbow with his leg elevated up on my leg so I can put quite a bit of pressure. I can get some length on that plantar fascia all along it, especially down where on this area of his foot near that sesamoid bone on the big toe and the instep. There were a lot of issues. So I'm looking to get length on the lateral arch as well. So I positioned the foot to use the bony margin of my arm to work the lateral arch, and also right along the attachment of the calcaneal ligament onto the calcaneus itself. There was quite a bit of stuff going on there. So, and I could see that in the horizontality of his foot. Here I moved to the dorsal view of the foot, so you could see what I was doing there. I'm using very much the meat of my arm to hold down the retinaculums that fuse the extensor ligaments into a channel on the top of the foot there. And then I was trying to have him do some motion with it while I did that. And I ended up putting my hand underneath, holding that plantar ligament, the fascia there, while he moved and such, and went back and forth a few times. So normally what I'll do is I'll work on one leg. In order to build awareness in the client, I'll have them stand up and take a walk. Now, this is a good technique, is to hold the fascia just above the patella on the knee, and then either facilitate a stretch or let them do it to try to get the quads uninvolved in the process of articulating the ankle horizontally while you're laying on your stomach. I could tell that was a real issue for him there. He had some really crazy stuff going on at the pes anserinus on this leg. It looked like just a deviation of the sartorius, the gracilis, and the semimembranosus had kind of deviated forward, and 70% of that tissue needs to come to the back. I went back toward the lateral arch here, did a little bit of stuff with my knuckles, rotating along the arch there, and especially with that ligament from the lateral arch comes underneath and attaches there in the instep. So it's funny, in a second-hour session, I normally don't have a client spend nearly as much time as I spent with him on his stomach, but I could tell that this was really going to help, especially in the 4th, the 6th, and the 8th sessions, which are usually lower body sessions. So, and especially being able to get his feet on the ground, because he does the kind of work where he wears, protective shoes, and because of that, they're very structured, very constrictive, and I can tell it's having a shape on the effect of it, shape on the resultant narrowness of his feet and the functionality of the arches. So we talked about that for a while, and I encouraged him to, when he goes hiking as much as he can or walking, to start getting a better connection with his feet, with the ground. And after I stood him up after one side and had him take a walk, that was one of the things I asked him is, what did he feel? And he said, I really feel a stability and a connection with the ground. That's what he felt. And he I think he spends a couple hours 5 days a week down at the MMA gym. And so for him, using his body as much as he does, both with his job and with working out in the gym, he's got a pretty good awareness of things that are changing and moving. Here's a little bit of up-close work I was doing with the calcaneal ligament. And it's really quite amazing if you can get some space there to allow the front hinge to work correctly. It was really fantastic. So, and I could tell that there was the way his shoes were wearing and such, that we had a real issue back there, and it was coming further up in the leg, especially in the lower part of the leg, both front and back. So, okay. I've got this, I think, on 300 or 400 speed, so I wouldn't bore you guys, but you can see he's getting a pretty good superficial fascia loosening, and the result of having one leg loosened and then sending him for a walk is it really helps them to understand the difference of what it can feel like from one to the other before you do both at the same time and then have them take a walk, because then everything's different and everything to compare with. So and oftentimes it's a little bit uncomfortable to have somebody walk after you've worked this much with one leg and then not done the other one. But so, coach them that it's going to be a little funky when they get off the table, having one stirred up and the other one not when they step down on the ground. So that's basically where we ended right here, and then we'll bust off the client view so you can see the before and after pictures and how things went. Greetings, all. Gerald with you on February 8th, 2019. I'm just now getting around to doing the client view analysis for Jesus Valencia's second structural integration session that we completed on the 6th. I guess it took us about an hour and a half, something like that, with all the Plantar and communications and such. But Jesus doesn't speak that much English, actually very little at all, so I communicated with him almost completely in Spanish, which is a good test for me to see if I can communicate the principle of structural integration in Spanish. So this is his first, this is his before picture for session 2. And putting on our second hour glasses, we're going to be working from the feet up to the knee and then possibly as high as the thigh here, depending on what happens. And in general, what we're trying to do is elicit a horizontal hinge in the feet, open up the superficial fascia all along the leg, and try to begin aligning the foot so that it aligns with the knee and with the quad when there's an extension and a flexion action while he's laying on the table. So we use that as an indication of how straight the leg is. There's a lot of difference in the shape of the legs, both the bottom and the top. The femur on this side is rotated differently than the femur on this side. You can see that, how it fits into the pelvis. And you'll see the tremendous effects of changes. There's some really interesting stuff going right above the patella here and here. And on further query, when he was very young, 6 years old, he broke his leg in this vicinity and had a cast from here down to here. And you can kind of see where that cast was if you look closely. I asked him where the pressure on his feet was striking. He told me right beneath this left foot on the big toe, where the sesame bone is below your big toe joint there. It's where most of his weight was landing. So it was kind of frontal, and you can see that in the leg. And then the other leg is adjusting and adapting to that. Got a lot of stuff going on with the extensor ligaments on the tops of the toes here. You can see that, how it's pulling the toes up in places. And so much so that the knuckle is pointing up on the feet. Okay. So here's the before, and there's the after. Okay. And he did slightly change the location of his foot. I want the feet like this, right together. But that said, what I focused in on was what the femur did, what the knees did, what the superficial fascia changes did as a result in the upper body. And we did a little back work and some neck work and a pelvic lift, like a normal raw 10 series. But let's go back. So here, before, after, the big rise in the right pectoralis that came up on this line. And we saw this front and back as well. This one was up a little as well, but it looks like this line continues to try to go back to the other side of this middle plumbar line. You can see this here is the rectus abdominis line. So in the after, it seems to come back onto the line, and he gets a big shift in the horizontality of his pelvis again. And this came from the feet, and you'll see that in just a minute. I think his head position, I think here he was looking at the line straight ahead like we wanted to. Here he might have looked slightly down. But I saw a very large change in the sternal area here that coincided with this change. So there's something going on with the clavicle on this side versus this side. You can see that in the front. And it has a lot to do with this difference in the symmetry bilaterally along this rectus abdominis mid-sagittal line here. Okay, and a lot of it is actually coming from the feet. You wouldn't believe that, but you'll see that in the session. This next side,
wasn't the best from looking at the alignment because his feet changed a little bit. I got to be a little more careful, make sure the feet stay exactly where they're supposed to be. But what I saw in this one is the effects of the legs, which you can't really see here. Actually, before, look at the shape of the superficial fascia. It looks very kind of quiet. And then here, all of a sudden, you can see you get a lot more length in the back of the legs, and it shows up in the length in the neck. You can see that. You'll see it from the back. Okay, so from the beginning, we've had this issue with the horizontality of the pelvis here. You can see it's lower on the left than it is on the right. I can see the pressure on the left foot is exactly the way it was from the front. All the weight's on the sesamoid bone, or the big toe. And this foot, even though he's tried to align his heels, he's got a little bit of a rotation in the femur that's not allowing his feet to go very straight here. So, and that coincides with this curve you can see in his back here. So here the line is again to the opposite side of the line, which front to back is correct. We got a little more length here from the last time. Remember, this was hiked up last time with the traps. But we still got some shortness here where it looks like it came from the impact on this side, or it's coming from the leg rotation here. So let's take a look at this. So here's the after. Okay, you can see this whole line of his neck, his head, everything comes onto the line. That's because this drop in the pelvis here. You can see that. Okay, so his lumbars drop down, it becomes more horizontal, the hands become more normal location. And if you go down to the legs, you can see where this happens. Starting here, okay, if you look at where the knees are relative to each other, you can see there's a big change here at the end. So by shifting the weight of where his feet are landing and all the alignments that changed here bilaterally, his weight came down and came on this line. So that's really terrific. This one, pretty close. What I see here is the same length in the back of the neck starting to show up that came from the legs. A lot more length in the hamstrings in this region that seem to show up in the change in the torso. So this is going the right direction. I really like what's happening. Okay. Especially this view from the back is really telling for some reason with him. It just shows so much. This has been Gerald Clark with 7 Planet Broadcasting, Jesus Valencia's post second hour session in client view. We'll talk to you next time.